the nature of the space is also connected to the idea that the president in the Oval Office and Air Force One is engaging in government speech, because the Oval Office, Air Force One are not places where other parties, journalists, or other people have any expectation to be able to speak themselves.
I think that is true. I mean, the president, whenever he speaks, obviously he's engaging in government speech. But if you're talking just about sort of pre-communicative activity of, observing what he says and does on Air Force One, I think that is a different sort of analysis that isn't pure government speech.
Tell me what's wrong with this way of thinking about it, focusing on speakers rather than places, or maybe incidentally addressing places, but really focusing on the speakers. There are two kinds of communication going on in the White House press pool event. One is communication between the president and the journalists, and one is between journalists and members of the public. And you can sort of separate them and say, okay, the president communicating to journalists with you 100%, but the district court took care of that problem, making crystal clear president doesn't have to engage with any journalist he doesn't want to engage with. Absolute discretion to pick who gets to ask questions and how he answers them, viewpoint based, like whatever he wants. And then the other level of communication is the journalists are they're passive observers, and then they are broadcasting out. That feels a little less intrusive, sort of like if we admit press pool to this argument, they have no expectation of speaking. They're here to observe and talk to the public. I mean, that's communicative. That's more communicative than the stuff in Price was. And that just doesn't implicate the president's speech interests in the same way.
So I think I agree with that, Judge Katchis, as to that step. Once they've got the information, and they are deciding to communicate it out to the public, they are engaged in their own speech. But there is the intermediate step of whether they are going to be granted access to that information in the first place. And that's what we were talking about here, because what we're talking about is not admitting them to the space and then preventing them from communicating. The question is whether they get admitted to the space in the first place so that they can collect and gather that information. And that is, I do think, very much the analysis of the Fourth Circuit in Baltimore Sun, where the court said it is a routine aspect of this industry that government officials grant or withhold access to non-public information based on their assessment of reporters' coverage.